I gave my stepkids everything they wanted. Then I overheard them call me a burden with money. I vanished for 2 weeks, taking my cash and expensive gifts with me. Their reaction was priceless. Don't forget to subscribe and share your experiences below. Let's get started. You're not my real dad. The words were dropped like a stone into still water, casual, careless, almost bored. They came not in a fight, not in a storm of anger, but on an ordinary afternoon. I had reminded Josh, my stepson, to put gas in the car I paid for, the one with my name on the insurance, the one he drove without hesitation as though it were his birthright. He didn't even glance at me when he said it. He just tossed the words over his shoulder, walked into the house, and left me standing in the driveway with the fuel receipt still in my hand. Ryan, the younger one, laughed when he heard it. Not a cruel, howling laugh. No, it was worse than that. It was the small, satisfied chuckle of someone who had just watched a curtain pulled back, revealing a truth they'd always believed but never dared to say aloud. That laugh pierced deeper than the words themselves. My name is Michael. I'm 55 years old. After my divorce, I left behind the life I knew and moved to Arizona. I carried nothing but exhaustion and a stubborn hope that maybe, somewhere in the desert, I could build a new life. That's where I met Emily. She was warmth in the middle of all that dry emptiness. A second chance I convinced myself I deserved. She already had 2 sons from her first marriage, Josh and Ryan. Their biological father had vanished years earlier. Not dead, not incapacitated, simply gone. He drifted in and out like a shadow, a man who broke promises as easily as breathing. Birthdays forgotten, school recitals skipped, bills ignored. He would appear once or twice a year, sometimes with a cheap gift, sometimes with nothing but excuses, and then disappear again into whatever hole he called a life. I told myself I could fill that space. I told myself I could be the man who stayed, who showed up, who gave. And for years, that's exactly what I did. I poured myself into those boys like water into a dry well. Every school trip, every pair of sneakers, every summer camp, I paid for them. When they outgrew their bikes, I bought new ones. When their friends had the latest tablets, I made sure they weren't left out. And when college loomed on the horizon, I worked extra hours, bled my savings dry, and shouldered the tuition without complaint. Vacations? I skipped them. Hobbies? I abandoned them. Dreams? I buried them. All for the idea of family. All for the hope that one day, when they were grown men, they would look back and see me not as a stranger, not as an outsider, but as the one who stood in the gap their father left behind. But even in those early years, I felt the coldness. At first, I brushed it off as teenage attitude. Boys too proud, too wrapped up in themselves to say thank you. I told myself it was normal, that love wasn't about immediate gratitude but about laying a foundation that would one day bear fruit. So I swallowed the silences. I ignored the blank stares, the way they would snatch gifts from my hands and retreat to their rooms without a word. I convinced myself that patience was the answer, that consistency would melt the ice. But the ice never melted, thickened. When Emily and I married, Josh was 18, Ryan 16. They weren't children anymore. They were old enough to know what they were saying, old enough to mean it. And what they meant was clear. I was nothing more than a wallet with legs. They could walk past me in the hallway without the smallest nod of acknowledgement. They could sit at my dinner table, eat the food I worked to provide, and carry entire conversations with Emily without so much as glancing in my direction. When I spoke, they looked at her, waiting for her to echo my words before they moved. My voice carried no weight unless it came through her mouth. And she, God bless her, she tried to smooth it over. They'll come around, she whispered at night when she saw the way I stared at the ceiling instead of sleeping. They're just teenagers. It's not personal. But it was personal. Every silence was personal. Every ignored request was personal. Every empty glance was a reminder. No matter how much I gave, no matter how much I sacrificed, I would never be their father. The warning signs were everywhere, though I refused to see them at first. I remember one Christmas. I had worked myself ragged that year, extra hours, endless overtime, to afford the gifts they wanted. Josh had his eye on an expensive watch. Ryan wanted the newest phone. I bought them both, wrapped them carefully, set them under the tree. That morning, they tore through the wrapping, glanced briefly at what they'd unboxed, and then muttered something about going to their friends' houses. No hug, no thanks, not even a smile. The gifts vanished into their pockets and onto their wrists, but I was invisible. Another time, Ryan wanted to join a sports team. The fees were outrageous, the equipment even worse. I pulled money from my retirement fund to cover it. I drove him to practice, waited in the car during games, cheered from the stands even when he refused to look at me. And when I asked him once, just once, if he enjoyed it, he shrugged and said, "Mom could have signed me up anyway. I should have seen it then. I should have realized the truth." They weren't indifferent. They were deliberate. They had already decided who I was to them. And the truth was brutal. To them, I was not family. I was not father. I was an accessory, a background figure, a man whose only role was to open his wallet on demand. Still, I pressed on. Still, I told myself love was enough. That one day, years from now, when they were older, they would see me clearly. That gratitude would come late, but it would come. But then Josh said it, "You're not my real dad." And Ryan laughed. And I realized they had seen me clearly all along. They say love blinds you, but money blinds you worse. I kept paying. God help me, I kept paying. Josh wanted a car lease when he turned 19. I signed the papers. My name, my credit, my responsibility. Ryan wanted to move out when he turned 18, his first taste of independence. I wrote the check for his deposit and the first month's rent. When their friends planned a California vacation, they joined without hesitation because I covered the cost. The money flowed like water from a faucet I could never turn off. And they drank it without thanks, without even acknowledgement. It wasn't generosity anymore. It was expectation. Their birthdays came and went. Watches, phones, gadgets worth more than my first car. I bought them all. I waited for a smile, a handshake, a nod, nothing. Each gift was just a stepping stone to the next demand. Emily warned me in quiet moments. "You're spoiling them too much," she said, her voice low, almost apologetic, as though she feared even that small criticism might break me. But I waved her off. I told myself this was temporary, that one day they would look back, realize how good they had it, and see me for what I truly was, the man who held their lives together. But the truth was staring me in the face, and I refused to see it. The first real crack came at a neighborhood barbecue, the kind of easy summer gathering where the smell of grilled meat mixes with laughter and music. I stood near the deck, beer in hand, pretending to enjoy small talk with neighbors. Emily was inside helping with food. Josh and Ryan were off to the side, leaning against the fence, talking in low voices. I wasn't supposed to hear, but I did. Josh's voice, sharp, cutting. "He's just a burden with money." Ryan laughed, that same cruel chuckle I'd heard before. "Yeah, as long as he's paying, let him hang around. After that, he's useless." Useless. That word echoed in my skull, louder than the music, louder than the laughter. Useless. I stood frozen, staring at my calloused hands. Hands that had lifted boxes, gripped steering wheels through long night shifts, signed checks until the ink were dry. Hands that had built their lives brick by brick. And in their eyes, all that labor meant nothing. I wasn't family. I wasn't a man. I was a burden with money. I remember staring down at the condensation dripping from my beer bottle, the way the droplets pooled at my feet, as though the earth itself wanted to swallow me. Neighbors laughed around me, oblivious. Emily's voice floated from the kitchen window, and in that ordinary summer evening, my world collapsed. I had believed that sacrifice was enough, that love would earn respect, that patience would eventually thaw their indifference. But in that moment, listening to their voices, I realized the truth. To them, I had never been anything but a bank account with legs. A man to be tolerated so long as the gifts kept coming. I wanted to confront them right then, to scream, to demand they repeat their words to my face. But I didn't. I swallowed it. I buried it. I smiled at the neighbors, nodded at their meaningless chatter, and let my soul rot in silence. That night, when we came home, Emily asked if I'd had a good time. I looked at her, at the woman I had sacrificed so much for, and lied. Fine. Just tired. She kissed my cheek, satisfied, and went upstairs. I lay awake in the dark, their words replaying again and again. Burden with money. Useless. The worst part wasn't the cruelty. It was the accuracy, because I had allowed myself to become exactly that. I had made myself indispensable financially and invisible in every other way. I had traded respect for the illusion of family, and they had cashed in without hesitation. For days after, I walked through the house like a ghost. I watched them use the phones I had bought, drive the car I had leased, live in the apartment I had furnished. I listened to Emily's reassurances, her small attempts to bridge the gap, and felt nothing but hollowness. And then I began to notice the small things I had ignored for years. Ryan borrowing money from Emily behind my back, confident she wouldn't tell me. Josh bragging to his friends about the vacation I paid for, as though it had come from his own pocket. The way they never introduced me as their father, never even as their stepfather, just Mom's husband. Their biological father's name still surfaced from time to time. In stories, in jokes, in half-remembered promises. They spoke of him with a kind of reverence, as though the man who abandoned them deserved more honor than the one who had carried them. They painted him as flawed but real. And me? I was artificial, convenient, replaceable. I realized then that no matter how much I gave, I could never compete with the ghost of a man who had given them nothing. Because he had the one thing I never would, blood. And in their eyes, blood was worth more than sacrifice. The anger in me grew, but it was a cold, silent anger. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that burns slow, steady, merciless. I started counting the hours I worked, tallying the dollars I spent. I looked at my own reflection and saw a man hollowed out, worn down to the bone. A man who had traded his soul for a place at a table where he was never welcome. And still, every morning I went to work. Still, I opened my wallet when they demanded it. Still, I played my role as the bottomless piggy bank, because part of me clung to the fantasy that one day they would wake up and see me. But the truth had already been spoken. They had shown me their hearts. I was nothing but a burden with money. And soon, they would learn what it meant when the burden decided to step away. The morning after the barbecue, I couldn't look at any of them. Emily brewed coffee and set a cup in front of me with a smile, as if routine could glue a broken man back together. Ryan sat at the table scrolling his phone, earbuds in, ignoring the world. Josh stumbled down the stairs late, keys to the car jingling in his hand, not even a glance in my direction. Their voices from the night before still rang in my ears. He's just a burden with money. As long as he's paying, let him hang around. After that, he's useless. Burden. Useless. I carried those words with me to work. I carried them through every meaningless meeting, every fake smile at coworkers. I carried them when I drove home, my hands gripping the wheel so tight I thought the leather would tear. That night, I sat in the garage with the lights off. The air smelled of oil and dust. My tools lay scattered across the workbench, reminders of all the times I had fixed their bikes, patched their shelves, repaired their broken junk. I looked at my car, the one Josh drove without thanks, and I realized something with brutal clarity. I had built a cage for myself, and the bars were made of sacrifice. So I made a decision. Not out of rage, not even out of hurt. Out of survival. The next morning, before dawn, I packed a single suitcase. I walked through the house in silence, collecting what was mine. Not what I had given, but what I had earned with my own sweat. I pulled watches from their drawers, laptops from their desks, the spare keys from the hook by the door. All the expensive tokens I had bought to buy affection, I took back. I left Emily a note on the kitchen counter. 7 words, written in my steady, unshaking hand. I need time. I'll be back later. Then I withdrew my savings, shut off my phone, and drove north until the desert gave way to mountains and the air grew thin and clean. I ended up in Nevada, in a cabin by a lake. For the first time in years I slept. No demands. No mocking laughter. No feeling like an intruder in my own house. Just silence, the kind that sinks into your bones and tells you that you are finally free. Days bled together in a haze of stillness. I cooked simple meals. I walked along the water. I stared at the stars, so clear and sharp they felt like they might pierce the sky. Each night I lay in bed and replayed my life, the years I had given away to boys who saw me as nothing but a wallet. And each night the truth pressed deeper. I had not been a father. I had been a fool. A week later I turned my phone back on. The screen lit up like a Christmas tree. Dozens of missed calls, endless messages, voicemails stacked one after another. Emily's voice, desperate. "Michael, please just call me. Please. The boys are panicking. We don't know what to do." Josh's text came next. "You had no right to take our stuff. That was ours. Bring it back." Ryan's message followed. "I need money for rent. Where's the transfer? This isn't funny." Not once did I read the words "thank you." Not once did I read "we're sorry." It was all anger, panic, entitlement. For the first time, they were face to face with reality. Their so-called burden with money was gone. And suddenly the ground under their feet crumbled. I sat in the cabin listening to their rage, their panic, their desperation. And instead of pain, I felt peace. Because their messages told me everything I needed to know. Without me, they were helpless. They had built their lives on the back of the man they mocked. For 2 weeks, I stayed gone. Emily's calls shifted from anger to pleading. Neighbors left messages about how worried she was, how the boys were acting out. I listened in silence. I owed them nothing. When I finally drove back into town, the house felt foreign, like a museum of my own mistakes. Emily stood on the porch when I pulled up, her face pale, her eyes red from nights of crying. Josh and Ryan hovered in the doorway behind her, arms crossed, trying to mask their unease with defiance. We sat down at the table, the 4 of us, and the silence was heavier than steel. Emily spoke first, her voice soft, ashamed. "Michael, you scared us. The boys didn't mean what they said. They're young. You misunderstood." Josh bristled, his jaw tight. "We never said you were useless. You twisted it." Ryan muttered under his breath. "You didn't have to take everything." Their excuses piled up like trash, flimsy and rotten. I let them talk until their words collapsed under their own weight. Then I spoke. "You've learned how to take," I said, my voice calm, deliberate. "But you've never learned how to respect. I forgive you, but nothing will ever go back to the way it was." Josh opened his mouth to argue. I raised a hand and silenced him. "You want gifts? Earn them. You want rent? Pay it yourself. You want respect? Start giving it. I won't be your piggy bank anymore. I won't be your ghost servant, carrying you while you spit in my face. From this day on, the rules change." Emily's eyes dropped to the table. Shame burned in her silence. Josh scoffed. Ryan muttered. But I saw the flicker of panic in their eyes, the realization that the man they had mocked had finally drawn a line in the sand. The house felt colder after that. Conversations were shorter. Meals were tense. The boys looked at me not as a father, not even as a wallet anymore, but as a stranger who had shattered their safety net. And for once I welcomed the distance, because I knew, with the certainty of a man who has bled himself dry, that love without respect is slavery. And I had been a slave long enough. Sometimes the only way to remind people who you are is to disappear long enough for them to notice what they've lost. And now they knew. The house was different when I returned. Not quieter, no. Quiet I had found in the cabin by the lake. The kind that seeps into your bones and teaches you the difference between solitude and loneliness. This was not quiet. This was tension. The kind of silence that hums beneath every word. The kind that fills the air with invisible knives. Emily tried to smooth it over. She set the table, cooked dinner, lit candles as though routine could erase what had been said, what had been done. But when we sat down, it was clear. Nothing was the same. Josh sat stiff-backed, his jaw tight. His eyes narrowed at me like I was an intruder in his house. Ryan picked at his food, avoiding my gaze, every bite heavy with resentment. Emily kept darting glances between us, her fork moving but her appetite gone. I let the silence stretch until it threatened to crush them. Then I spoke. I've been listening to you for years. Now it's your turn to listen to me. They shifted uncomfortably. Even Emily lowered her eyes. I gave you everything, I said. My voice was calm, steady, but heavy with the weight of years. Not because I had to, not because it was easy, but because I chose to. I worked myself into the ground so you could live without worry. And in return, I got silence. Indifference. Mockery. Josh rolled his eyes. Ryan muttered, "We didn't mean it like that." I leaned forward, my gaze sharp. "You meant every word. Burden with money. Useless. Don't insult me further by pretending you didn't." Their faces hardened, but they didn't deny it. Emily opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. "No, not this time. You've excused them enough. Tonight, they'll hear me." I let the words settle like stones in the air. "You think you've been clever. You think you've figured out how to take without giving, how to use my labor while spitting in my face. But here's the truth. I'm done. From this day forward, everything changes." Josh scoffed, a bitter laugh. "What, you're cutting us off? You think that'll scare us?" I nodded slowly. "No, Josh, I don't think it will scare you. I think it will teach you. You want a car? Buy one. You want an apartment? Sign the lease yourself. You want tuition, vacations, shiny gifts? Then work for them like I did. My money is mine now. My labor is mine. The bank is closed." Ryan's fork clattered against his plate. His voice cracked. "That's not fair." "Fair," I echoed, my tone sharp as a blade. "Fair would have been respect for the man who raised you. Fair would have been gratitude, acknowledgement, a single moment of decency. Instead, I got contempt. You call this unfair? I call it overdue." Emily's hands trembled on the table. "Michael, they're just boys. They don't understand." I cut her off. "They're not boys. Josh is 20 now, Ryan 18. Old enough to drink, old enough to vote, old enough to know exactly what they're saying when they call me useless. If they're old enough to spit venom, they're old enough to live with the taste of it." The room went still. Only the sound of the clock ticking in the hall broke the silence. Josh pushed his chair back, glaring at me. "So that's it? You're done being our dad? You're just walking away because we said something stupid?" I stood, my voice low but steady. "No, Josh, I'm not walking away. I'm standing up. For the first time in years, I'm standing up for myself. I will still be here. I will still share this house, share meals, share moments. But I will no longer be your servant. You want a father? Start treating me like one. You want a provider? Find another. Those days are over." Ryan's eyes watered, though he tried to hide it. "So what now? Are we supposed to just beg for everything?" I shook my head. "No, you're supposed to earn. Respect, love, support. None of it is free anymore. You want it, you give it. You don't, you lose it. Simple as that." Emily finally spoke, her voice breaking. "Michael, is there no way back? Can't you forgive them?" I looked at her, the woman I had carried for years, the woman who had stood by in silence while her sons sharpened their cruelty against me. My voice softened, but only slightly. "I forgive, but forgiveness doesn't mean forget. And it doesn't mean return to the old ways. They burned that bridge with their own hands. What rises in its place will not be built on money. It will be built on respect. If they can't give that, then they'll get nothing from me." Josh slammed his chair back and stormed out. Ryan followed, muttering under his breath. The door upstairs slammed shut, rattling the walls. Emily sat in silence, her face pale. For the first time, she didn't argue. For the first time, she saw the truth. I was done being a slave to their contempt. The days that followed were tense, heavy with unspoken rules. Josh scowled when he saw me. Ryan avoided me entirely. Emily moved through the house like a ghost, torn between her sons and the man who refused to be their victim any longer. But for me, for the first time in years, I felt free. The weight of endless giving had been lifted. The chains of thankless devotion were broken. And as the days passed, something strange happened. The boys began to hesitate. Ryan washed his own dishes without being told. Josh asked before taking the car. Small things. Insignificant, maybe, but they were cracks in the wall they had built between us. I didn't celebrate. I didn't trust it, but I noticed, and I let them sit with the knowledge that their lives were no longer underwritten by my sacrifice. Because here's the truth I learned the hard way. Love without respect is a contract written in disappearing ink. It fades. It vanishes. And all you're left with is the debt. So I rewrote the contract. With boundaries. With consequences. With respect demanded, not begged for. I had given them everything. They gave me nothing. Now the balance had shifted. And sometimes the only way to teach people who you are is to walk away long enough for them to realize what they've lost. They lost the endless stream of money. They lost the invisible servant. But they hadn't lost me, not yet. The question was, would they ever learn to value what remained?